Now, we're going to have two different pathways that we are going to look at. We have our anaerobic and our aerobic pathways. And before we get into each one of them, I just want to talk about the differences between them. Now, the primary difference, the obvious difference between them, is the aerobic metabolism is going to require oxygen. So aerobic means requiring oxygen. Anaerobic means it does not require oxygen. So the first difference, aerobic is the pathway that requires oxygen. Anaerobic does not require oxygen. Now, whenever a reaction requires oxygen, it needs to move into the mitochondria. So that means that all of our aerobic pathway steps will be in the mitochondria. If it doesn't require oxygen, it can happen in the cytoplasm. So the anaerobic pathway will be in our cytoplasm. The other difference between them is that the aerobic metabolism actually makes so much more ATP. Anaerobic only makes about 2, aerobic makes over 30 ATP. And for that reason, it's usually our body's plan A. The body prefers to do aerobic. If it can't do aerobic, then it will do anaerobic, or in certain situations, the anaerobic might be beneficial. For example, one of the other differences between aerobic and anaerobic is that the aerobic pathway is a lot longer. It takes a lot more time than the anaerobic pathway. It's able to make so much more energy, but it does take its time in making that energy. Now, if you were doing something that required energy quickly, you needed that energy quick. For example, if you were doing really high intensity exercise, you're using up that energy really quickly per second. And so in that kind of situation, you need energy to be replaced quickly. You don't have time to go through the long steps of the aerobic metabolism. And so in that situation, you would prefer the anaerobic pathway because even though it doesn't make as much ATP, it gives you that energy quickly. So again, anaerobic doesn't make as much ATP, but it's a very short, quick cycle. So it's going to be beneficial in situations where you are using up your energy very quickly and you need it replenished very quickly. Like if you were doing high intensity exercise and using up lots of energy per second. Now, if, for example, you were just taking a stroll in the park, you are not using up much energy per second, you are using your energy up a lot more slowly, so you don't need it replaced as quickly. In that situation, you're going to go with plan A because it makes so much more energy, the body prefers it, and we have time to go through this long pathway and end up producing all of that energy in the end because we're not using our energy up very quickly when we're doing something like, for example, just taking a stroll. That doesn't require much energy, so we don't need to replace it very quickly. It's not going to run out quick. We have time to do our aerobic and end up with lots of energy in the end. So again, just to recap the differences between them, aerobic requires oxygen, so it's going to happen in the mitochondria. Anaerobic does not require oxygen, so it will happen in our cytoplasm. The aerobic is our plan A because it makes so much more ATP. And because of this, it also takes a long time. So it makes a lot of ATP, but it's a long pathway to end up with all this ATP in the end. Anaerobic only makes about 2 ATP, but it is a shorter, quicker cycle. So in certain situations where we need energy quickly, we will go ahead and go with our anaerobic pathway. Now, since the anaerobic pathway is a lot shorter, we're going to start off with that one first and get it out of the way, and then we'll spend the rest of the time on the aerobic pathway.